In my garage, I feel safe. No one. So I don't know. I don't know the lyrics, but I'm singing that song because every time I hear that song, by the way, I'm a '90s kid. Actually, I'm an '80s kid. Hey, tell me when they say like you're an '80s kid or a '90s kid, are they saying that based on your wonder years or your high school years? So if it's based on my high school years, I'm an '80s kid. If it, I mean, my wonder years. If it's based on my high school years, then I'm a '90s kid. So I don't know what kind of kid I am, uh, but that song Weezer in my garage, I think it's called, reminds me of my life because not just what I'm doing here these years. Oh, someone says Wonder Years. Okay, it is. So then I'm an '80s kid. I'm old as fuck. I'm an '80s kid. Okay. Well, even though I'm an '80s kid, I formed a lot in my '90s because when we're in high school, we are sponges. I think our high school years are the most influential as far as how we morph into adults. I really do. I think our high school years. I don't think it is our wonder years. I do think our wonder years are the most. Those are the years that we are the most in our solid self. And of course, I think it depends on your upbringing, your environment, and all that. But the wonder years are really a time when our dial is turned to curiosity, and we're like tasting ants, and we're just the world is very big, right? In high school, the world becomes very small. In high school, everything becomes life or death, and so when the world is big and we're pulling from curiosity, there's a fearlessness, and so I think the wonder years are very empowering, and I think this is before we've gotten hurt. This is before we understand rejection, right? And this is before we start internalizing. And so when we get to high school, now we are sponges. Now we are tying things to worth. Now we um, get crushed when we're rejected. Everything is life or death. I mean, when you think about high school and you think about the person you had a crush on, and if this person liked you back, life was amazing. And if this person didn't know you existed, life was hell, right? Or if you got, a C on your report card, or if you didn't get on the football team or the cheerleading squad or whatever, if you weren't included, if you weren't picked, then life was shit. And if you were picked, then life was amazing. And I think because high school is so life or death, so extreme, that I think that because of that, it really forms us, and it forms us into our 20s. And I think a lot of us in our 20s are either making up for high school because we were lacking in some way, or we believed that we were, or we are, or we think that we like. So if you're popular in high school, then in your 20s, you think that you are, or you want to be the prom king or queen, or the person that was really popular in high school. And if you're not, that cliff that you fall from is very high, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's get to your questions now that I've lost most people in the room. Oh, the garage thing. The reason why I relate to that is because yeah, I literally work out of my garage, uh, but I think I have this obsession of locking myself in rooms, and it started when I was 12, playing with Legos and just kind of becoming a mad scientist by myself. It's not. It's like this weird, um, and maybe it's also the writer in me. It's like this weird craving to get isolated and focused and uh, drown myself in something. And usually, it's in that drowning that I hit flow states and find myself. It's very strange, but I think a lot of artists, a lot of writers can relate to what I'm saying. But I've been doing this since the '80s, and it's where I find my flow, you know. And now with podcasting and writing books and creating content, um, I'm in my garage doing what I've been doing for uh, the last 30 years or so. There's a lyric in the song by Weezer, and he says in his garage is where he feels safe, and it's I can relate to that for sure. All right, question number one: started dating a man, divorced 1 year. First, he has dated since. Okay, you're the first that he has dated since. Am I doomed? Bad pancake? Question mark. Um, First of all, or do we? I've never heard someone call someone they're dating a pancake. It's very strange. Do we call each other pancakes? I mean, I know we've called each other waffles and crepes, but I've never heard. No, I'm kidding. Let's usually it's not in the dating. It's usually once you have turned the dating into a relationship that you start calling each other food items like pancake or muffin or tater tot or whatever. But when you're dating someone, um, to call them a pancake is I've never heard that, but it is. I'm mentioning this because I think it's kind of telling of your mindset in that it seems like you want relationship. Obviously, you want to get to pancake, you want to get to muffin and all the foods that we call our partner when we have swim past the dating and now we're in a relationship. I get it. You want that, and you're dating a man who has been divorced for a year, and you're the first that he's dated. I think rightfully so that you should be concerned because you're the first. Where, you know, is he ready to date? Is he ready to give you what you want? Is he ready to invest, to let go of the marriage? You know, all of that stuff. Does he have closure? And you know what? I think that we can get into our heads on if someone else is ready. I would put the focus on you. I would ask you, are you ready? And I would be less concerned about the other person. And I'll tell you why. A lot of times we keep focusing on if the other person is ready, what they have to give, uh, and we lose track of us, what we want to bring to the table if we are ready, right? And I think that if you just focus on you and you focus on who you want to be and what you're bringing to the table in this relationship, you focus on how things can be different this time, not only because of who you choose, but because how you show up. If that becomes your focus, then it will play out, you know. And if the other person is not ready because he's going through a divorce or it's only been a year or whatever, um, you're gonna know pretty fast. And as long as you are focusing on you and not evaluating the other person, you're going to give this more of a fair shot. Does that make sense? If you're focusing on just taking a black light to the other person, putting the other person through a strainer, and pointing fingers, perhaps, uh, you're not going to give it a fair shot because you're not going to be present. So I would focus on you. I understand you're the first person that he's dated since the divorce. I think it's okay to be aware of that. I don't think we need to announce it. I don't think we need to um, evaluate or give this person a report card. He's on his journey. I would focus on what you're bringing to the table, and you know, you're 50% of this. So whatever experience that you want for yourself, focus on that. Focus on communicating. Focus on providing a safe space for this person to possibly process a little bit of this. Yes, you're not his therapist, and yes, he shouldn't be verbally vomiting every feeling that he has. But you're the first step into the pool, you know, and it's a good thing, right? Because it's fresh and it's a compliment to you, I think. But it could also be that he may not be ready. I think the concerns are valid, but don't let your concerns become what stops you from giving yourself a meaningful dating experience, a love experience. And I also want to say, don't make this about the promise. And I'm saying this because in your message, you asked me if he's a bad pancake, and calling him a cute breakfast food item tells me, and maybe I'm looking into it too much because I'm a therapist, but it tells me that you want a relationship, and that you want love, and you want a partner, and you want pancakes on Sundays, and you want someone to do nothing with. I get all that, but one step at a time. Bring it back to you. Um, how are you showing up, and what's going to be different this time because of how you're showing up, not because of where the other person's at. Okay, that was kind of a long explanation. Okay, next question. Best ways to accept an expiration. This person is referring to what I call breakups, an expiration that you don't want, and forgiving yourself. Best ways to accept an expiration that you don't want. Okay, so you didn't want to end this relationship, it sounds like. And also, a person asks, how do you forgive yourself? Forgiveness, first of all, I want to say is a process. And a lot of people think that forgiveness is a choice, and you either forgive or you don't. I think it starts with a choice, but I do think it's a process, like any process. And I think some days it's hard to forgive, and some days it's easy. But it is a daily choice, like our decision to love someone, you know? So that I just wanted to say first. And then how do you how do you move on? How do you Let me look at this question again. Oh, best ways to accept an expiration. Well, it's interesting because you say you want to accept a sex expiration. Oh, because you didn't want it. Okay, I get it. I get it. Well, the the answer is in your question, in that it's an expiration, meaning you have to believe that it wasn't meant to go further. It wasn't meant to end sooner either, right? Like this is where it expired. And I think one thing that's been helpful for me is, if you have to convince yourself and the other person to be with you, right? If you have to convince yourself that um, this this is something that you want, if you have to convince yourself, and also if you have to convince the other, if there's any convincing in this equation of a relationship, it's going to be lopsided, right? And so if the other person doesn't want this, ask yourself, by convincing the other person to be in this, what would that look like, right? Is that something that you want? I think a lot of people do a lot of convincing because they're afraid to lose someone, or they're trying to convince themselves that this is worth the fight. And then they get into something, or they stay in something that is off balance. They stay in something that gets them to constantly chase. The relationship is lopsided. And then what they're getting, or what they're giving themselves, is a love experience that is exhausting, is chase driven, is hanging on strategy. It's not fulfilling. You're in your head, you're spinning, you're wondering, and it's hard to build something. It's hard to build something when you don't get the return. So I would make that a non-negotiable. That being said, I personally have been ambivalent in the beginning of relationships, because I was going through my own shit, and it's something that I put on the table and announced to my partner. And if that's happening, that's different, because it doesn't mean that the person is unsure about you. It means the person is in a space where he or she is kind of unsure, and they're shedding light on it and wanting to talk to you about it, which then produces trust, right? And so if your person, well, in this case, the person seems to, the relationship is expired, right? So it's about you accepting that what it wasn't going to be good for you because it was lopsided. But if you're in something and you're dating and you're feeling a little bit of ambivalence or a back and forth from the other person, and if the other person is not saying anything, then yeah, that I definitely think can be a red flag. But if the other person announces it and says, "Hey, listen, this is what I'm going through. It's not about you. It's about where I'm at and why I'm sure I'm also working through it. I want to be with you." I think that's okay because I've definitely done that and have struggled and also like pushed through it and realized that most of it was my own shit, you know. Of course, now when you're like that, you're going to activate the other person, and then that becomes their shit. But this is why it's important to talk about things, to put things on the table, so we are both taking ownership of our piece. I don't think I took a breath during that whole thing. Since I started this episode, I haven't used any periods yet. Maybe a few commas, but just in life in general, I need to use more periods. I need to end things and take a breath, or I'm just one run-on sentence. I think that's the best way to describe me. I think if you were a friend of mine and you said, "How do describe John Kim in one sentence?" It would be that he's a long run-on sentence. I think that's what most people would say. And also because my grammar is poor and I'm a C student, so yeah, I don't know how to use periods. I never learned. I was busy playing with my Legos and breakdancing. Thank you for listening. Be well.